The world of Blade and Sorcery is extremely new, yet its lore actually goes extremely deep. Blade and Sorcery went from being a silly sword-fighting VR demo to being a fully fleshed game, with an in-depth story and interesting gameplay. There are many pieces to the lore of this game, so up on screen right now are timestamps. If you're looking for a certain thing, go to that point in the video. And if I sound familiar, it's probably because you've seen some of the Blade and Sorcery lore series on my channel. This video isn't a compilation of the series. It's made completely new with corrections and further explained information. If you think at any point that you enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. This video has taken a lot of time, so any support helps a lot. There is one thing that is central to the world of Blade and Sorcery that needs to be explained in order for everything to make sense. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of these before we talk about anything else. Crystals. Crystals are the source of sorcery. When they are consumed, they give the user the ability to use sorcery. The problem with them is that they are extremely dangerous and addictive. They have a negative physical and psychological effect on the body. They can easily kill users if too much is taken, but if the dosage doesn't kill you, the more you take, the more powerful you get. Think of it like meth that gives you superpowers. Each area of the world has a different view on crystals. Beth is the planet or moon that Blade and Sorcery actually takes place on. It orbits the giant planet you can see in the sky known as Orion. The continent that Blade and Sorcery takes place on is currently unnamed, and it is unknown if there are others on Beth. There are 8 of what I'm going to call provinces: Rocka, Aridan, Centaur, Madlu, and Kartib. They all have their own distinct culture, and each one of them seem to mirror a culture from the real world. Eridan. Eridan is where the events of Blade and Sorcery take place. It has a moderate climate and is home to the Eridan Kingdom. We'll talk plenty more on them soon. In ancient times, Eridan, and possibly more of Beth, was inhabited by an ancient race known as the Dgarians. Ruins of their ancient monoliths can be found deep within the mountains of Eridan. Recently, crystals have been found in these mountains, which has made Eridan a hotspot for anybody vying for power. Despite all of that, Eridan has a very strict ban on crystals. There's a lot of cultures they could be inspired by, but I think they align most with Old Britain. Under Eridan is the province of Centaur. Centaur is said to be very sandy. We know that at some point there was a war there called the War of Sails, which in some way made the province stricter. There isn't a whole lot of information on Centaur, not because they are mysterious, but because there's just not anything else written. I'll explain why later. Above Aridan is Rocka. Their land is very wet, which leads to the northern parts of their province to be very icy, and the lower parts to be very swampy. They have a couple interesting things going on. There's a huge class divide there. Some buildings owned by an extremely small portion of the population are massive and meet every need someone could need, while the majority of the population is stuck in extreme poverty, living in small bamboo huts with little to no food. Something all classes have in common though, ironically enough, is gold. Gold is extremely plentiful in the Rockan Mountains, but as the note says, you can't eat gold. With half of the land being swampy and the other half being icy, almost none of their land is farmable. Another thing that every class seems to have in common is their addiction to crystals. Crystals have made Rocka an extremely dangerous place, and caused Aridan to actually stop trade with them. Recent reports have shown that the Emperor of Rocka has recently begun making moves on land in Aridan, though reports are foggy. Rocka's government has very loose restrictions on crystals. It seems that that's the biggest reason they are in their current predicament. They seem to be inspired by South Asian cultures like Japan, as things like Rockan samurais are mentioned. Down south and across the sea from Aridan is the province of Kartib. It is filled with harsh environments and even harsher weather. It is very hot during the day and very cold during the nights. It is an extremely diverse province, and is said to be more like separate smaller kingdoms rather than being one large entity. It contains camels and apparently giant sandworms, which is one of the only mentions of mythical creatures within the world of Blade and Sorcery. Because of how diverse it is, there really is no consensus on crystals. and there really is no one culture it's inspired by. But that may not be true for long. As it's said, a warlord is going around and uniting various smaller kingdoms. They say he's supported by a small faction of sorcerers known as the Dust. It's hard to pinpoint one, but they seem to be inspired by African or Middle Eastern cultures. Above Kartib is the province of Madlu. Their province is absolutely frigid, and it's said that the Medin people are extremely reclusive. They do not take very well to outsiders, and it may take days for them to allow you to get anywhere into their province, if they allow you in at all. There isn't much known about them because of that, but something that is known about them is their interesting use of crystals. They don't ingest them, but instead use them in architecture, for things like light, heat, and protection. They seem to be heavily inspired by Scandinavian cultures. The tower, or the PMN, is that giant obelisk you can see all throughout the game. It creates a giant storm that forms around it, making it completely inaccessible through conventional means. It is pivotal to the world of Blade and Sorcery, so we'll definitely talk more about it later. Unlike places like Aridan and Centaur, Greystone is actually not a province. It's actually an island just south of Centaur with a jungle-like environment. The island was a mystery for quite some time, until a group of soldiers were sent over to survey it. When they arrived, they saw zero signs of human life. But, as they were mucking around the jungle, they found a passageway covered in vines. After cutting through the vines and descending down the long staircase that was inside the passage, what they were met with was dead men. But something just a little off about the dead men is that they got up and started attacking the soldiers. They had no reaction to being stabbed, slashed, or even dismembered. They outnumbered the soldiers 10 to 1, so they were forced to retreat. Since then, reports have been saying that the dead men, or the zombies, have taken over the surface of Greystone, making travel there nearly impossible. The Eastern Rainforest is known as the Forgotten Continent. It was the original homeland of the Medin people. Like Greystone, it's filled with lush forests. But apparently, over a long period of time, the land and forests themselves began to become hostile. The forests became dark and twisted, creatures became aggressive and mangy. Its original inhabitants blamed crystals for this, and that's why consuming them is considered taboo in Maldu. That rhymes. Now, my personal theory around Greystone and the Eastern Rainforest is that these were originally going to be Blade and Sorcery's DLCs. Before 1.0, the devs were planning to do DLCs and/or expansions. I stated this theory in my original video around Greystone, and since then, it seems to have spread pretty far. There are 4 factions that we are fighting throughout the game: the Outlaws, the Wildfolk, the Aridan Kingdom, and the Eye. But before I explain them, I need to explain the Kemenet prophecy. The prophecy of the Kemenet goes as follows. When the Mayakna and the Layakna meet, they produce somebody with total ease over the control of sorcery. Their destiny is to make it through the 6 trials of Helculus and eventually claim the all-powerful Sword of Na. Doing this will cleanse sorcery from Beth for a time. And if you're wondering who that Kemenet is, it is us. The Outlaws are the weakest faction in all of Eridan, but despite that, they are probably the most abundant. They are loosely organized. They are led by one guy, who leads captains, and those captains lead guilds. Some of those guilds are the Northern Seas, the Southern Seas, and the Windweavers. They are thieves by trade. They steal goods and sell them back to the guild for commission. Recently, their main source of income in Eridan has been crystals. As stated before, crystals are extremely illegal in Aridan, yet they have high demand, so they can make bank by peddling them around. They aren't really organized, so every one of them has different feelings about the Kemenet. But really, the only reason they want to kill us is for our stuff. The Wildfolk are the most mischaracterized faction in the game. They are a faction that is currently quote-unquote invading Aridan. They use sorcery, but not overly. They believe in balance. They think that sorcery is a tool, and treat everyone the same whether or not they have the capability for sorcery. They're actually extremely nice. When a member of the Dgarian Preservation Society, who we will talk about later, got lost in a Dgarian ruin, a bunch of Wildfolk eventually found her. And instead of hurting her, they actually helped her. She had her injuries healed and was let out of a ruin by them. My personal theory is that the Wildfolk are actually just native Aridians, who don't want to get rid of their old ways and are willing to fight for them. The reason they fight us is actually because of a complete misunderstanding. They actually love the Kamenet and see them as a savior who will help keep balance. They just don't believe that somebody who tears people limb from limb could be their prophesized Kamenet. All of this makes me feel just a kind of, a little bad about killing them. The Eridan Kingdom is the army and government of Aridan. They are very organized under their queen, I think I'm gonna butcher this, Alstia Valarin. They are currently on a purification campaign, which means they are hunting down and pretty much slaughtering every crystal user they can find, which is extremely ironic because they take in crystals and use them for their own benefit. What's odd about their sorcerers, though, is that they don't seem to be doing this willingly. Eridan seems to be using some kind of mind control in order to have them do their bidding. They don't even call them sorcerers, they use the word thralls. Their history goes back very far. Eridan was united by somebody named King Elderic the Wise. He's the guy that you can see in the big statues and the little figurines. He led some kind of crusades against sorcery. He killed men, women, and children, but of course, Raiden doesn't want you to know that. The Aridan Kingdom doesn't seem to believe in the Kamenet prophecy all that much. They just wish to slaughter us because we are stealing their maps, and of course, because we use sorcery. The Eye are the opposite of the Aridan Kingdom. They wish to kill everybody who doesn't have the ability for sorcery. They view all of them as inferior. They go through villages, slaughtering men, women, and children, just because they can't cast spells. They use the Aridan persecution of sorcerers as leverage to get people to join their ranks. They consist of extremely powerful sorcerers, and are really only overpowered by Aridan because of their low numbers. They hate us, the Kamenet, and wish to kill us because part of the Kamenet prophecy is ridding all sorcery from Beth for a time. Taking away their ability for sorcery would end up crushing their faction.
Hello mate, this is the Baron from Blade and Sorcery, and I'm here to read the lore about my character in the game. The Baron, or Sakarian Gravano, is the only friendly non-player character we have in Blade and Sorcery. He operates a small shop on the edge of the Tower of Storm, selling weapons and armour gathered from shipwrecked flotsams to those looking to operate outside the law in the Kingdom of Eridan. It's discovered through game lore that the Baron was actually a captain of the Outlaw faction known as the Guild. Though the Baron's personal opinions on crystal shards align with the Queen of Eridan, his role as a senior figure in the Guild, along with his criticisms of the Queen's cruel methods, put him at odds with the Kingdom of Eridan, and making him a wanted man. Having lost his barony status in the failed coup known as the Centauri War of Sails, the Baron began his second life upon meeting Ramian Yendevo, leader of the budding pirate faction, the Guild. The Baron and Ramian had many adventures together and grew the Guild into a powerful smuggling operation, brokering illegal goods between embargoed nations. As time went on, an increased demand for crystal shards created a boom for the Guild, launching it into great wealth, but equally leading to a rise in more unscrupulous activities and the personnel operating within the Guild. Despite the benefit to the Guild, the Baron is an outspoken critic of their crystal shard peddling, citing his experiences on the damage it can cause, such as crystal corruption in Rocka, the undead horrors manifested at Greystone, and the destruction of the Medin homeland. On a pragmatic level, he also cautions that the continued smuggling operations in Eridan will eventually draw the full scorn of Queen Valerian right down upon the Guild and maybe even the whole of Centaur. Notably, the Baron has long suspected Ramian himself has become dependent on a crystal, citing a stark deterioration in the decision making of his former friend. Following a series of uncovered embezzlements, Ramian's runaway paranoia and declining mental state led him to lash out against all traitors, real or otherwise. In a covert operation known as the Great Purge, Ramian ordered the arrest and execution of Guild leadership, including the Baron. The sudden collapse of Guild leadership brings us right up to the timeline of Crystal Hunt, where the Guild is unravelling and the Outlaw faction are only loosely held together as opportunistic brigands and cutthroats. Initially, the Baron had taken up residence on the island off the coast of Eridan to act as a covert broker of information, investigating the sudden burst of activity that followed the discovery of the Dgarian ruins. Following the Great Purge, the Baron continued to reside in the island permanently, opting for a simpler life and aligning himself with the Dgarian Preservation Society, who aims to secure the mysteries of the Dgarian Tower and the powers of the crystal before any other opportunistic factions can. Hailing from Centaur, the Baron has travelled all across Beth. Everything the player learns of Beth and of Blade and Sorcery lore beyond Crystal Hunt comes directly from the Baron's personal lens.
The Dgarian Preservation Society, or the DPS, are the only faction that we can't fight. We can't fight them because we are kind of a part of them. The DPS is a group that works to discover and, preserve pieces of ancient Dgarian history and technology. They are loosely connected to the Aridan Kingdom. They are currently working for them, but don't actually like them too much. They seem to be just using them for protection instead of their actual goal, which is to locate anything that can be used to combat or negate sorcery. They are using them because they have some ulterior motive. The Dgarians are an ancient civilization that disappeared long, long ago. They built the impressive Dgarian ruins. Every facet of Dgarian life used crystals in one way or another. They used them for ingestion, but only really to benefit society. They found a balance with them. The Dgarians had many inventions. My favorite invention of theirs is actually their notes. They are actually more like recording devices. You would speak into them, and they would etch whatever was said onto stone. Another invention, and definitely the most famous one, is Helculus, or as you may know him, Hector. He is a Dgarian construct powered by prismatic crystals, which are also something that only appears in Dgarian ruins. They have their own language, which lines up perfectly with that of English, leading me to believe that Dgarian may actually just be an ancient version of it. It's currently unknown what it sounded like. The only depiction of a Dgarian we get is this. Everything points to the Dgarians being human. This is most likely just some kind of armor. They were wiped out mysteriously. My theory is that it was during Eridan's original purification campaign. If there was recently a Kemetic cleanse, their sorcery that their society is completely built on would have been completely and utterly useless, which could have had them easily eradicated by Aridan forces. It's just a theory though. They remind me a lot of the Dwemer from my favorite game series, The Elder Scrolls. We know the Baron is a fan, so there's a chance that they're an inspiration. They had some pretty funny words for things. Laikna is their idea of conscience and mind. Maikna is their idea of body and power. Jizkurin is what they call sorcery. They also have their own words for each type of sorcery. Kandalrim is lightning, Sinkalarim is fire, and Veularim, I think I said that right, is gravity. Sorcery is, sorta important in Blade and Sorcery. There are 6 types of confirmed sorcery. Gravity, fire, lightning, mind, and body. And maybe healing. In the DPS notes, a Wildfolk druid is said to have used a healing hand. And I think that confirms the presence of a healing spell in Blade and Sorcery. But we haven't actually seen it, so healing hand could mean something else. I don't know. There may be a few more unmentioned types, but there's one more that I have a theory on. During the development of Blade and Sorcery, there was a planned 4th type of sorcery called Soul, but it was cut before the final release. A theory of mine is that it was only cut from the gameplay, and is actually still in the lore of the game, and might have something to do with the Greystone zombies. Again, it's a theory, so take it with a grain of salt. The strength of sorcery in the entirety of Beth is decided by the buildup of sorcery in the core, and potentially the closeness of the collapsed star in the sky, Kesova, though that's more unclear. Anyways, crystals are what gives people the ability to use sorcery. There are 3 types of crystals: crystal shards, crystal cores, and prismatic crystals. Crystal shards are the most common and need to be ingested in order to use sorcery. How they are ingested is still unknown. In-game, which kinda absorb them, but it's never mentioned if that's just for gameplay reasons or if that's how it's actually done. They seem to be found and mined in many places. There have been mentions of them being found in Greystone and most obviously, Aridan. But due to how common they are, I can imagine they're found in every province. Crystal cores are what decides what type of sorcery is cast. They aren't consumed, so how someone binds with them is unknown. In-game, we can get crystal cores from transforming prismatic crystals using a Dgarian machine. But I doubt every sorcerer ever has done that. So my theory on how people get them is that they're just kind of floating around in the world. Someone would transform them at a Dgarian ruin every time, and they would lose them one way or another, and they would fall into the hands of someone else. Eventually, enough people put enough crystal cores through Dgarian machines that pretty much everybody has them. It doesn't really seem all that likely, but I wasn't given much to work with, and that's the best I got. The effects of crystals and sorcery on the body aren't good. If someone doesn't use sorcery right, they can literally melt themselves to death. I feel the effects of sorcery are best explained through the journey of Dr. Orlean. Dr. Orlean is, a doctor who's looking to help outlaws because of how dire their situation is. He keeps a journal that details his experience working with them. Dr. Orlean's journal, Day 1. There's so much work for me to do here. The state of these people is unbearable. I've seen more horror in a day staying among the outlaws than I did in a month at the Royal Hospital. I don't regret my decision, but those crystal shards create so many gruesome effects on their users. I must study them closer to find potential ways to help these poor beings. Oh, by the way, the days skip around, so I'm not actually missing anything. Dr. Orlean's journal, Day 3. Just about yesterday, a young boy, maybe 15, decided to double the number of shards he usually takes. After only a few minutes, you could see in his eyes just how much he regretted his decision. Being a fire manipulator, the shards seemed to amplify a lot of his heat generation. His body turned red, he was sweating profusely. Eventually, it was clear nothing could help the poor lad. He was quite literally melting in front of my eyes. First, the softest part of his body. His eyes started to melt first, and he was screaming in horror for help. Soon enough, his agony would be over though. His whole body seemed to either melt and fall to the ground, or instantly catch fire. After what was left of him collapsed to the floor, the whole thing caught fire, and there were only ashes of him left. I will not forget his desperate cry for help while I could do nothing. Dr. Orlean's journal, Day 12. After about 2 weeks here, I am exhausted. I would need at least 3 more fellow doctors to assist me in my tasks. While I strive to save as many of these poor souls as possible, the extent to which they have hurt themselves is impossible to handle. Dr. Orlean's journal, Day 14. Today, a gravity user came back to the camp, claiming to have found and absorbed a core gravity crystal. Regardless of if that was true or not, she proceeds to show off the extent of her new powers to the crowd. She jumped from the top of a nearby cliff and attempted to control her fall using some gravity pushes. The issue is, she used them much too late, arriving at full speed to the crowd. She pushed really strong. Way too strong. 3 people that were right under her got hit by the gravity ripples in full swing. The result was horrifying to say the least. All of their members were ripped apart. Arms, legs, necks. What was left was a pool of blood, and body parts all around. One thing that really terrified me though, is that the gravity user didn't see the reality of what she did. Under the influence of the crystal, she was euphoric, laughing at the situation, covered in blood. That, of course, only lasted for some time. And when the effects slowed down, she realized what horror she created. She will be executed tomorrow. Send a message to the rest of the group. Dr. Orlean's journal, Day 38. I am running out of time. I decided to attempt a risky experiment on myself. I will expose myself to a very small dose of shards to understand the effects. Maybe this will give me some clue as to how bodily functions are influenced by the shards. I will journal the effects tomorrow. Dr. Orlean's journal, Day 39. I am writing under the effects of these shards. It's becoming increasingly difficult to control my emotions, and my hands are shackling to Mac. But oh, Dubai felt good. I felt amazing. I don't sense anything wrong in my body. Just I so much enjoys the power. I come back to Easter later. Now I want to try my new power. Per word. Dr. Orlean's journal, Day 40. Today I feel absolutely terrible. Everything is hurting me. I have a massive headache and I barely slept last night. The only thing I remember is that I felt great, and then increasingly terrible. I couldn't get anything of medical use out of this experiment. If not that, I now understand why the Outlaws can't stop using this thing. Of course, they use much more than I did. They must build a tolerance to the shards, which causes them to need much higher doses to get the same effect, but with increasingly strong negative effects as well. Dr. Orlean's journal, Day 41. I can now say that I don't feel the need to come back to it, and definitely not the need to increase the dose. In any case, with how little I took, I don't risk falling into it again. It did feel nice though. I wonder if I should try to experiment with a smaller dose to regain some of my consciousness. Dr. Orlean's Journal, Day 42. Yesterday, I took some shards again. I thought I would only take a smaller dose to carry out my medical experiments. But as soon as I took a little, I thought to myself that there would be no harm in taking a bit more, since it wasn't a large dose. Soon enough, I found myself taking shards again and again. I am trying to refrain from taking more, and it definitely feels like an effort to do so. I do understand the Outlaws' struggle now. They certainly have a very hard life. Resisting the urge to gain powers again is an immense effort, even at my level. Dr. Orlean's Journal, Day 43. I met with one of the pirate leaders, Sakarian Cravano. I believe he might be the one they call the Baron up in Aridan. He confessed to disapproving of the sales of shard, and we both agreed that the only way to help the Outlaws would be to stop the sales altogether. He will use his influence over the pirate ruler to see what can be done. He mentioned, however, that this could go very wrong, and is even prepared to go into hiding in the worst-case scenario. I did not expect a pirate leader to have such kind of morale considerations. Dr. Orlean's Journal, Day 45. I have been using shards for a few days in a row already. I told myself that this is the end. I am so angry with myself. How could I, an experienced doctor, expose myself to such a dangerous component? It's over. I won't use any more again. I may use one tonight to feel the effect one last time, but then it will be over. I decided to go back to the capital to study my notes in my laboratory in order to not expose myself to the danger of shards until I find a viable cure for them. Dr. Orlean's Journal, Day 46. I lost a leg yesterday. I took more shards. A lot more. Lightning started to emit from my feet uncontrollably, and then my entire body. The feeling was rather pleasant, actually. The outcome, not so much. I have burns all over, and my left leg was so badly damaged that I had to amputate it. I'm stuck here now, and there isn't much I can do about it. Dr. Orlean's Journal, Day 47. I'm feverish and weak. I fear for my life. I sent a letter to the hospital ward in hopes that they will come out and rescue me from my misery. In the meantime, I shall rest and limit my shard consumption as much as I can. That is the last note from Dr. Orlean, and we can actually learn in a Baron note that is the last one because he dies after this. I feel like if I just summarized the section of notes, it would have severely downplayed the effects of crystals, so that's why I did it this way. The prophecy of the Kemenet goes as follows. When the Maikna and the Laikna meet, they produce somebody with total ease over control of sorcery. Their destiny is to make it through the 6 trials of Helculus, and eventually claim the all-powerful Sword of Na, and cleanse sorcery from Beth for a time. The Kemenet will bring great power and order to Beth. But in the ending, that's not what we do. We grab the sword and we die. It's because the prophecy simply isn't true. The Kemenet does not exist. Around 10,000 years before the start of Blade and Sorcery, there was a massive extinction event that only a small portion of the population survived. This was due to the buildup of sorcery in Beth's core. Now, there's a single way to stop this from happening again. The sacrifice of a powerful sorcerer. Now, why would any powerful sorcerer just want to die? They clearly wouldn't. But something that a powerful sorcerer would want is more power. So they handcrafted this story in order to make powerful sorcerers unknowingly sacrifice themselves. It's a trap that we fell into. The Sword of Na in the tower isn't even actually a sword. It's the rod that activates the sacrificial process. It's just designed to look like a sword to lure people in. So what are we if the Kemenet doesn't exist? Well, we're just some dude. People are born with different capabilities for sorcery, and we are just really good at it. All the stuff the DPS does is actually cover for their real mission, to pick and choose the next Kemenet. They scout for people with strong sorcery capabilities and put them on this path with the promise of power. These lies go so deep that the Baron is actually involved. He was placed in order to help us on our journey. As stated earlier, he is currently being hunted by somebody. The DPS offered him safe passage away from Eridan and the guy who is after him if he assists us in our journey. Whether or not he actually cares for us is up for debate. But he's not helping us because he wants to. The secret ending is, in a way, another branch of the story where we weren't as blind. We read and studied our way through things and eventually uncovered the truth about the prophecy. We go in and claim the power that was promised, but when we do this, we are willingly causing a mass extinction event. we are killing millions of people on purpose. From what the DPS can tell, the extinction event is mere years away from happening. So even though we come out of it with our life, it takes the lives of millions of others in the process. Because of this, the ending where we live is actually the bad ending for Blade and Sorcery. Thank you for watching. This video took hours to produce, so you watching really means a lot. Blade and Sorcery is what built my channel, and it's the only reason I'm here right now. I want to thank everybody who has helped me with these videos, and most importantly, the Baron and the rest of the Blade and Sorcery team. It's been almost a year since I've started doing these Blade and Sorcery videos, and I've grown so much since then. I'd also like to thank anyone who subscribed, as it truly means a lot. I have a Discord where you can come to talk about the lore, or anything else really, in the description. And again, thanks for watching.